Whenever people talk about the biggest metal bands of the 2000s, the conversation almost always ends up revolving around the same handful of names. For me though, Bullet For My Valentine always stood out from the rest. There was just something about them that instantly takes me back to the mid-2000s. Every time I hear Tears Don't Fall or Waking the Demon, I immediately get the urge to violently headbang while picturing old YouTube videos, scratched Xbox 360 discs, baggy jeans, spiky hair, and everyone trying to learn those guitar riffs after school. They became one of those bands that perfectly captured what it felt like growing up during that era, and I honestly don't think enough people give them credit for that.
Cold sweats, hallucinations. Can you see me through bloodshot eyes? I will fight one more fight. Don't break down in front of me.
What's interesting is that Bullet For My Valentine arrived at exactly the right moment. Nu metal and pop-punk had dominated the late 90s and early 2000s with bands like Limp Bizkit, Blink-182 or Linkin Park, but by the middle of the decade people were starting to move on. Metalcore was exploding and every teenager seemed to own a black guitar with EMG pickups while trying to learn sweep picking after watching guitar covers on YouTube. Looking back now, it almost feels like the perfect storm, because games like Guitar Hero and Rock Band were also becoming huge around the exact same time. Playing guitar suddenly became cool again, and bands like Bullet For My Valentine benefited massively from that. The funny thing is that Bullet never really felt as extreme as some of the other metalcore bands at the time. They had screaming vocals, heavy riffs and breakdowns, but they also weren't afraid to write choruses that stayed in your head for days. I honestly think that's one of the reasons they became so popular. They managed to sit right between metal and hard rock without fully belonging to either genre. One song could have crushing riffs while the next minute you'd be singing along to one of the catchiest choruses imaginable. Some metal fans criticized them for that back then, but I think that's exactly what made them stand out. Not every heavy band has to sound like they're trying to summon demons for 4 straight minutes. It's better to just wake the demons of cringy 2000s werewolves. The Poison is still one of my favorite debut albums from that entire era. What's crazy is how incredible that album sounds, considering it was their first major release. Usually, debut albums have a few standout songs mixed in with a lot of filler, but The Poison is packed with memorable tracks from beginning to end. 4 words, Suffocating Under Words of Sorrow, All These Things I Hate, Hit the Floor, and of course, Tears Don't Fall are all songs that I still come back to today. There are very few albums where I can honestly say I barely skip anything, and The Poison is definitely one of them. Tears Don't Fall also became one of those songs that almost everybody knew, even if they weren't into metal. The opening guitar melody is instantly recognizable, and I honestly don't think I've ever seen a crowd stay quiet once that riff starts playing.
Let's go!
It's one of those songs that became much bigger than the band itself. Even people who haven't listened to Bullet For My Valentine in 15 years usually remember every word once the chorus starts. That's pretty impressive considering how many bands from that era have slowly faded into obscurity. Another thing I've always liked about Bullet is the guitar work. They wrote riffs that were technical enough to be exciting without becoming impossible to listen to. Some metal bands get so obsessed with showing off that they forget to actually write memorable songs. Bullet For My Valentine never really had that problem. Sure, there were plenty of fast solos and harmonized guitar parts, but they always felt like they served the song instead of existing purely because somebody wanted to impress other guitar players. I also spent way too many hours trying to learn those solos when I first started playing guitar, and let's just say it took a shit ton of time, but it was so worth it.
There goes my Valentine again, something
The mid-2000s also had a completely different atmosphere surrounding heavy music. Social media was still in its early days, streaming didn't exist the way it does now, and discovering new bands felt much more exciting. You'd hear somebody mention Bullet For My Valentine at school, borrow the CD from a friend, or stumble across one of their music videos on Kerrang or MTV. I honestly miss that feeling. Finding new music required a little bit of effort, and because of that, every new band you discovered felt more special. Today, an algorithm recommends hundreds of artists every week, and half of them disappear from your memory 5 minutes later. I also think Bullet benefited from looking the part without feeling overly manufactured. They had the eyeliner, the tattoos, the black clothes that pretty much defined alternative culture during the 2000s, but it never felt like a record label had created them in a laboratory. Whenever I watch old festival footage from that period, I also realize just how massive Bullet For My Valentine actually became. Download Festival, Rock am Ring, Graspop, and countless other festivals regularly had enormous crowds singing every chorus back at them. I think people sometimes forget that because newer generations didn't experience that era firsthand. There was a period where Bullet For My Valentine were absolutely everywhere. Every rock magazine seemed to feature them, every music channel played their videos, and almost every teenager who listened to metal had at least one of their songs on an old iPod. I think nostalgia also plays a huge role in why I still enjoy listening to them so much. Their music instantly reminds me of a completely different internet. Old YouTube layouts, MSN Messenger, burned CDs, Windows XP desktops, and downloading music videos that took half an hour because your internet connection sucked major Alexis Texas ass. Bullet For My Valentine might not have changed metal in the same way bands like Black Sabbath or Metallica did, but I honestly don't think they needed to. They became the soundtrack for an entire generation that grew up during one of the most exciting periods for modern metal. Their songs are still just as much fun to play on guitar today, the choruses are still incredibly catchy, and The Poison remains one of the strongest debut albums the genre has produced. Every time I go back and listen to those songs, it almost feels like opening another little time capsule from the mid-2000s.